It's an honor to introduce to you Sergio Fajardo, who is currently the governor of Antioquia in Colombia. He was the mayor of Medellín from 2003 to 2007, and he led a huge transformation in the city for which he's famous, and he was named the best mayor in Latin America. For the work that he did in Medellin. We're really eager to listen to the experience that he led in Medellin. As you know, Colombia has been suffering from violence since the 1980s, and a lot of what has happened there, I think we really need to investigate carefully to try to learn from what works and what doesn't work in other settings. I should mention that he's, a lot of these amazing transformations come from unusual places. So he's not a, he's not a politician. He's a mathematician. He's a university professor that was, that became a major and then, led this transformation. And I also would like to mention that I feel thankful that he accepted our invitations. I just sent an email to him, and it's very seldom that someone of his stature just answers emails that way. I'm very happy that you were able to come. And please join me in welcoming him.
Antioquia is the most habitated state in Colombia. Take away Bogota, our capital, that is a district capital. And we have 125 municipalities. Medellin is one of those. And it's a complex territory. You saw the faces. We have everything within Antioquia. Everything happens in Antioquia, and nothing happens at a low key. Everything is streamed with us. That is good sometimes, and sometimes not as good. I'll show you why. So there we are in Antioquia, and right here in the middle of Antioquia in the mountains is Medellin. I'm going to move directly to this that I want to explain, and I like to take some time because I listen to many things. Since I come from the academic world, I'm not a professor any longer in the sense that I had to give up my professorship at the university in order to get into this world. I'll tell you a little bit about that. I used to know how I was going to pension, to retire. Now I have no idea. I have no pension guaranteed. But I want to do something that usually is not talked about, and I think is very important, because it's very interesting to see how you compare places and experiences and good practices and so on, but many times you forget, or people forget, we forget, many distinctive characteristics that make things work in one particular context. So people would come, look at that, and say, I'm going to do the same thing to solve the same problem, and that's completely mistaken. And in the academic world, we have to be very careful with that. So I'll try to explain some about our particular experience. And the reason we are here is not mathematics. I wish I weren't here, in the sense that I'm going to talk about something that I wish I didn't have to talk about, violence. I'm going to talk about things from a different perspective. I should be here in the math department giving a conference, presenting my papers or my results in mathematics, but the reason we are here is politics. And we cannot forget that. Behind the whole thing is, this is not a technical people working on solution of problems. This is a political problem, and all what we have heard here, or I heard this morning, is political. So we have to talk about that and understand that. And what's the politics that we do? A little more than 14 years ago, a group of people in Medellin, 50 people, actually less than 50, but 50 is a good number, so people would remember. 50 people, we got together, and we recognized two things. The first one, that we have spent our lives saying how things should be done. We have tried to put part of our work to improve our society. We were careful, we cared about our society. We were critical of many aspects of our society, and they did it, or we did it, from different sectors. My sector was the academic sector. I myself, for example, was a member of the Colombian National Science, Basic Science Council, from different alternatives, trying to participate there, make sure that things would happen, more people could afford education. I don't see my wife here. Oh, there is my wife. And I would write newspaper columns. I would take part in all possible debates, trying to inspire, talk about education. But whatever I myself said, at the end, it would finish with a statement like this: this has to be done. Okay. But then, with this group of friends, many from NGOs, many that work like you, like the experiences that we saw from Mexico, from Brazil today, many from there, those spaces, of course, the academic world, professionals, and so on. When we got together, we said, after all these years, we have to understand and recognize that politicians are the ones who make the most important decision in our society, whether we like them or not. We didn't like them in the traditional practice. Valuable people, there have been, and we have valuable people through different parties, not to make this a personal problem, but we didn't like politics in Colombia, and we can spend the rest of our lives saying what should be done, and it's up to politicians. Most of the things, in the sense that we dream them, it's up to a politician in power to carry those things out. So after this too simple but very deep consideration, we said we are going to get involved in politics. We are going to build, a civic independent movement in Medellín, and we are going to win the city of Medellín, and I myself led that project, and I'm going to be the mayor of Medellín. That was 14 years and a half ago. That was a decision that we made, and what I want to tell you is how we have made that, how it happened, because it has to do with the things that you see in Medellín and you see in Antioquia. It doesn't come from technical people telling a governor or a mayor said, you should do this and that in this community. It's a political decision, and that's what I want to show you with this slide. So how did we do it? People would laugh at us. They would joke and say, how come these guys are going to win the election? Medellín has 2.5 million people by itself, and they are going to defeat these powerful political electoral machineries that we have here with the traditional parties. They are a joke. They don't laugh at us anymore. Here we are. And we showed how things can be done. And what I'm going to show you is our path, and how within that path is the root, the seed, that allowed us to do what we have been doing. Actually, we are actually governing, so we are doing what we dreamed from the very beginning. And the first thing that we did was get together 50 people, and we know that we share things, we are friends, but write down those very basic concepts that we share, write them down carefully, and do it. So we did it. In mathematical terms, what we did was we wrote down the axioms, those very basic concepts that we all agreed upon, and from those we were going to build our relationship with society, and we were going to do what we wanted to do. That was the first step. And then we stated, I am a mathematician, you can see a little bit of mathematics behind this. We stated the problems that we want to solve. And the problems that we want to solve are, first of all, inequality. We live in a very unequal society in Colombia, in Antioquia, in Medellín, in Latin America, and now in the United States, the word inequality appears. When I got my Ph.D. here at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, the word inequality didn't belong to the United States of America. We have known about it for decades, centuries, but here it didn't belong. We have seen it since we were born, and we claim, and we don't want to live in a society that is unequal. Unequal is unjust, and we want to change that in our society. That's a problem. It's stated there. That's a political statement. The problem of Medellin and Antioquia is not mobility. It's not the traffic congestions. It's for us. It's not the quality of math. The problem is inequality, violence. I don't have to explain about violence. And the culture of illegality that has corruption as a main chapter. Those are the three problems that we want to solve. And, of course, we have to work on the solution of the problem. The first step was, how do you get into power, which is very important. And the way you get into power, I'll explain it a little more in the following slide, determines how you govern, determines what type of things you can do. So we propose the solution, which is, the recipe is, we want to make education understood in the 21st century the engine of the social transformation, which means in the 21st century context, education, school, science, technology, innovation, entrepreneurship, and culture. That's education for us, understood in a broad sense. And we did it in Medellin. In Medellin, what we were striving for was Medellin, the most educated, and we are doing it right now in Antioquia, Antioquia, the most educated. I was the mayor of Medellin, then a friend of mine from our same movement came into power. I know right now there is another mayor from the Liberal Party. We had a good relationship with him, and I am the governor of Antioquia. We have been following a path. Since 14 years and a half ago, we got together and we said, we are going to get into power. We are going to get into politics. We are going to get into politics to get into power to transform this society. And we are going to leave behind our lives, and we left them. And so what we have been doing throughout all these years since we began is described by this statement here, this formula. We have been coherent. Coherent means every step that we take doesn't contradict the steps taken previously. And we have been consistent. And consistent means that we have kept the same principle. We don't change principle depending on who we are talking to or which meeting I am attending at. We have kept the same principles. In mathematics, it's very easy. If you change the axioms, depending on the problem, you solve any problem. That's very simple. But those principles, we have kept them. So we have been coherent and consistent. Then what we have built, which is our social, our political capital, is trust. People trust us. And that's very valuable. You can buy votes. In Latin America, you can buy votes. Here in the United States, you can buy votes in a different way. You don't pay a person $10 to vote for someone, but Mr. Koch, for example, or these huge millionaires put all the money in to do some things. They are buying votes in a different way. You can buy votes in Latin America. You can buy leaders, at least in Colombia. I don't know if in other places of Latin America that happens. I suspect so. But trust, you will never be able to buy it. Not even here in Walmart. Trust, you have to build it, and that's what we have been building throughout all these years. And that's the essence from what I do here. And what, for me, and the way we understand is the essence from what has happened, or for what has happened in Medellin. All these things has to do with this. If we forget about this, we are forgetting the crucial factor in order to have a social transformation. So it's not a matter of going, visiting, and copying. It's a matter, for me at least, is understanding what we have been doing. So, in a very simple way, I like this explanation. We have three trees. Let's picture it. The inequality tree, violence, and illegality. The three problems make them three trees. We would like to pull them out, uproot them, and you look at those, and usually this happens, and you think this is one tree, this is another tree, this is another tree, but they forget to look at the roots. And what we have been having, I put 1980, when narco traffic began in Medellin, in Colombia, in the dimension that we have it, just as putting here a date, and you look at the roots, at the beginning they may be separate, but as they move, as the year passes by, the roots continue downwards, and they get entangled. And after all these years, those roots are all entangled in such a way that you don't know what root belongs to what tree. They just have a single root. And if you have a single root, they may look different outside, but you have to make sure that you understand that they have a single root, and if you are going to work on the problem, you have to do it simultaneously. And that's very important. It's very simple, but it's very important to understand, because you cannot solve this problem just doing a little bit here or a little bit here if you don't understand that you are working simultaneously on the three problems, because they have a single root. You cannot take these three out without taking the other two. After all these years, as I say, they have the same root. And that's crucial to understand, to see what we do, and many of the things that we do. I'm going to review the fundamentals. That's the most important thing that I can tell you. Buildings can be done, but the fundamentals are crucial to understand why that building is in there, what we are addressing to, how we change society, what are our dreams, how things happen. And this is what is most important. The first one is everything is built around four concepts. Dignity. Dignity is very simple. We are equally valuable as human beings. Everyone talks about dignity. Dignity is crucial. Respect. Capabilities. We are all equally capable. We have different expressions, but we recognize ourselves as capable. And of course, recognition. Those are four crucial concepts that we have behind the whole thing that we're doing here. And if you are coherent and consistent, and you apply those principles all the time, you will see what happens. Politics, of course, that's what explains the whole thing. And I just wrote down a statement there, a sentence, which says, the means justify the end, as opposed to the end justify the means. And that has to do with the following. In politics, traditionally, most places, even here, the end justify the means. The crucial point is we have to get into power. Once we get in there, we will do very good things, but we have to get in there. And there is a group of people called politicians who know how to get there. We say and apply, no, the way you get into power determines that the end that you are looking for or you are striving for is valuable. How you get in there. And that's very crucial for us. I'll explain it a little bit later. Because in Colombia, most people say, well, don't worry, politicians will get you into power. They know how to do it. You just look the other way around. Just don't smell. But once you get into power, you will do wonderful things. That's false. And that's a fallacy, and that's a trap that we have been trapped for many, many years. Say, well, that's what we have to do. And we have to keep that in mind very carefully. The problems. Let's revisit the problems. I'm going to see it later again. But inequality means, I'm going to show you in a second, there is no hope. It doesn't mean that you're poor. Inequality at the end means there is no hope. I'll explain you why. Violence. What's the power of violent people? The power of violent people is fear. They instill fear on us. And if we are fearful, then the society fragments itself. You have to survive. You are not a citizen, you are a survivor. So you have to be in your own. The cities get fragmented. You will never dare to go to this part of the city. Within the city, the neighborhoods, people would stay in their homes because they are scared. And that's the power that violent people have. They fragment us. They divide us. So we are survivors. Illegality. As I said, the end justifies the means. In appearance, very important people are very illegal. And that illegality is at the root of all the problems that we have, is my claim. Everything goes in order to get there, whichever way, or a chapter in illegality, which is corruption. Corruption takes public money. That's one part of corruption, but the most important one. Public money goes into the pockets of those corrupt people who are in power, and they take some away to give handouts. And again, people have to kneel themselves in front of the powerful, the ones who have the money, and this becomes a society of people who are slaves, of people who have money. And that happens throughout. The richness that we have in our society becomes handouts, and that takes away our freedom. Corruption goes directly against freedom. They are taking away our opportunities. And in the corrupt world, there is a phrase that says everything. Whoever has a prize, you will find it. Could be extremely difficult, but with enough money, you find the price of the person who has a prize. The difference will be made by those who don't have prize. And there are at all levels, but there are some who have a prize. And those are the problems that we are facing when we are working on this solution. Key to the whole thing is community. And I was listening to Mexicans, Carlos, the Brazilian, I don't see him here. Okay. And I heard Eunice talk about, she's from the government talking about things. But the crucial point thing here is how we deal with the community. And when I say the end, the means justify the end, that has to do with processes. How we get determines how we do things. And what happens with community? There is a statement very repeated, which says, you have to see in order to believe. It's associated with Santo Tomás. You have to see in order to believe. What we claim is, with the community, and every person within the community, everyone has to understand. People understand. Every single human being can understand. We need a good teacher. If you are a teacher, we professors, we teachers have to take the best out of every single human being, every single student. The instruction is very easy. Getting the best out of every person or for a community requires a teacher, but people have to understand. Everyone understands. But you have to take the time to explain what you think. Secondly, they have to see, but they have to physically feel what happens. And when you put together understanding plus feeling plus seeing, then you believe. And that's very different. Many people think you have to do things. Politicians, they may steal some, but they build something. They do some obras. That's part of the justification of corruption. Okay, they don't steal all the money, but they do something. But people have to understand, see, feel in order to believe. And that's very different. And that requires a different attitude towards communities. So we have to put together the pieces, many things. I'm going to try to explain you a few. And of course, the place where we get together, if we are all divided, fragmented, scared, you have to get together. And where do you get together? In the public space. And how are we going to get together into the public space? I'm going to explain you a sum, but I'm going to tell you something that has to do with what we did in politics and what we did once we were in power. We walked. The way we did politics, Medellín and Antioquia was walking, physically walking. Medellín is a big city with mountains, but we walked throughout the city. Every single corner we went there with our leaflet, handing it out to people in the streets. We didn't go through politicians who will take us to the community. We went directly to the community. We didn't have to ask for permission to anyone. We didn't have any machinery. We went to the people talking. But we got something that is very powerful, which was we got the city in the skin. We smelled it. We saw it. We touched it. That doesn't happen very often. I would see Eunice that she has to tell people to go to the communities. We walked through the communities years. Then you have to love this thing. It's with your heart. If you don't love it, people would never see you feeling. And that's crucial. And then, of course, you have to use your brain. You have to reason. We study. We put those together, the skin, the heart, and the brain, in order to get in touch with the city. When we won the first election, I was a professor. I myself, I talk about myself, but this is a group of people. But I was the symbol in the sense that I was the candidate. But I was a professor who had never had any previous position, besides being a math professor at the university. I used to be a full professor. I had my tenure and everything. I have nothing now. But that's what I was. And that's what we were. We were getting in there, and people vote for us, and we won by a landslide without buying a single boat, but we walked. We loved the city with all our heart, and we studied carefully what has been done, what we know, and we put all those things together. And that's what allows you to make a transformation. So it's not that a technical people tells me what to do. You have to have it. That's the path that we have followed. There may be other paths, but it's important to, what I want to share with you is what we did. Then what we have to do with the public space is we have to change the skin of the city. We have seen violence throughout the city. There has been blood in the streets. So we are going to change that skin, and we are going to change it with the public space. We are going to build the most beautiful places for the humblest people. But that's not an architectural project. It's a sense of dignity, changing the skin where violence has done what they have done with violence. We are putting together. That's dignity, not architecture. It's dignity. You talked about the aesthetics and ethics, and that's what we have done. Beautiful buildings can be designed anywhere. Wonderful architects, there are plenty of wonderful architects throughout the world, but this is a political project where the building is associated with changing the skin, the most beautiful places for the humblest people, which means dignity of people. Because traditionally, the beautiful things belong to the rich people. And we have to connect. If we are fragmented, then we have to put the pieces together. We have to connect the city, for example, or the state. We extend from Medellín to Antioquia. I'll explain you a little bit about that. I'm going to explain you how this statement I'm going to explain you, but we have built, and this is crucial, we have moved from fear to hope. Hope means there is a path. It doesn't mean that the problems are solved, but people start believing in something and saying there is a chance for me. And that's very powerful. And that's what we have been building since we began 14 years and a half ago, walking, physically walking. And that's the power that we have. And for me, that's the power that we have developed. That's how it pays all our efforts, all what we have been doing in politics since this group of people decided to bet on a political project like the one that we have had. And now we have been in power without knowing what power was about, in the sense, theoretically we knew, and here we are. So I'm very proud to present this thing because that's our life. Those are our dreams. And that's what we have been doing, and nobody could have done it for us. We have done it by ourselves. There are many ways to do things in life, many ways to approach things, but this is ours. And that's the power that we have, as I say, and that's what we have done. I'll show you more. And these are all my drawings. You will excuse me, but I still am a professor. I have my notebook. I like to prepare class. I like to make my own notes. I like to think about the problems. But this is the problem that most people face in Colombia. And I would say throughout Latin America, most places. You sit here, you stand here, you look ahead of you, and what do you see? What you see is a huge wall. Here it is. And I call it the inequality wall. They see a huge wall. They know what's behind the wall, opportunities. But they see no way to go through it. It's huge in front of you. And on the side, you see a door. And this door is the door that leads to the illegal and violent world. So you have a wall, seal, very high, and you see a door that leads you to this world of illegality and violence. And then you are sitting there, and you ask yourself, well, which way should I go? When you look at the wall, you say, how? And then you look at this one and say, and why not? That's a cartoon. But it explains very much of what happens to many people in Colombia. Let's say in Medellín and Antioquia, I don't have the right to talk about anything else. I'm just talking about what I have seen in Medellín, in Antioquia. And that is what happens. And of course, that's the dilemma that we are facing. That's the problem, once again, being faced by a real person. Again, this is an exaggeration, but it makes the point. So you can walk through here, And very easily you can move behind. So you don't have to go through all the efforts of escalating that huge wall in order to get to the opportunities. You take the door and cross this line, which is very fine line in our societies. Okay? So that's the wall and the door. At the end, what do we want to do? What we want to do, I don't have this graph. What we want to do, the formula, I'm going to give you the formula at once. What we have to do is we have to narrow this door so that it's as narrow as we can. That door exists in all societies. But how wide it is depends on what society you are, which place you are. We have it very wide open, unfortunately. So we have to make it narrower and narrower in a sense that it's more difficult to get in. If it is narrower, it will be more difficult to get in. And the way to make this narrower is opening up doors here. This wall, we have to permeate and open doors here, and those are the doors that lead to opportunities. So hope is when this guy here looks in front and sees there is a door here that I can go through. And this is not the only one that he has or she is facing, instead of this huge wall that you don't know how to overpass. That's a way of saying exactly what I've been saying, but expressed with this cartoon. Let's take a look at this illegal world. Let's take a look at the door. What happens inside here? What you will find. Well, you know a lot about this. You have been here for 2 days talking about that illegal world inside. But what we see is narco-traffic. We have narco-traffic in Colombia, unfortunately, but that's part of what we have seen in our lives. And associated with narco-traffic, we have bandas criminales, organizaciones delincuenciales, you name it, paramilitary. We have had everything in Colombia. The difference today is, for example, that there are many Mexicans today here. A few years ago, people would look at us and say, those are Colombians. And it was associated with being Colombian, associated with all these things. And of course, we are Colombians from Medellín, from Antioquia, from all our beautiful country, Colombia. But that wasn't a Colombian problem. It was a particular situation. And what is happening to Mexico and Central America and all over is dramatic, painfully dramatic. That doesn't make me any happy. And of course, but that's a problem that we have in there, and it has to do with this country, with the United States, in other countries. But the problem is not going to be solved saying, well, in the United States you consume plenty of drugs, so you are the responsible for all these things. We are not going to solve that problem that way. I believe, for example, in legalizing many things and so on, but that's not going to solve my problem in Medellin today. So we work on the problem that we are working. We keep clear the issues, but we find this with the worst that you can find associated with delinquency. We have the criminal business, extortion, robbery, kidnappings, all these things you will find in there. In addition to that, in Colombia, we also have the guerrillas. We have had that for more than 50 years. So if you get into that world, you have plenty of things in front of you. And we have had them for many decades now in Colombia. And we know a lot about these things, what happens inside here. And something that cannot be forgotten, corruption is all over the place. Because I see some alternatives, proposals, and so on, but somehow people seem to forget about corruption that is involved in all these things here. That's the culture of illegality, when you put all these things together, corruption and all, and that's not as simple as it may appear. We have to work with the police force. We work with the police force. We work with the justice system. In Colombia, we have improved. It has taken us many years. Many valuable people have been killed throughout all these years, and we have improved. I was talking and saying, I wish Mexico learned from our painful lessons in many senses, so that they can avoid many of the things that they are seeing right now. And you have, and we know many things about here. For example, things that we have improved. Plenty of problems we still have ahead. But I'll give you an example. Anyone any cartel leader, any leader, basically guerrillas, narcotraffic, eventually they hunt him down. They capture them. And now they capture them very quickly. The first one, whose name I never repeat, it comes from my city, whose name, again, I never repeat. It took the Colombian state more than 15 years to capture him. But at the end, well, they killed him. And now the lifespan for people who come into this world is far shorter. So it's not a life project. Of course, and I heard this expression in Mexico, and it sounds funny in Spanish, but not only funny, but very powerful statement. I was at the DF, Mexico City airport, and I was talking to a guy there, and he told me about young people in Mexico. That's a generalization. He said, most kids here live according to the following sentence. I'm going to say it in Spanish, and the Mexicans translate. Yo prefiero vivir 5 días como rey que toda la vida como güey. Why don't you translate? A Mexican.
5 days, I rather live 5 days like a king than forever like a.
But in Spanish, rey and güey sound similar. And that's what he said. And that's when you are facing that door. And in Mexico, you have inequality. I never hear talking about inequality, but there is inequality in Mexico too. And throughout Latin America, all over the place, different degrees. Colombia is at the top, unfortunately. But that's something that the guy who is looking in front says, I'd rather go through here than spend all my life like away. And that happens. So life has shortened in there. Anyone is captured. Anyone is captured. In Mexico, for example, these days, they have been able to capture some of the key guys, but it has taken a long time. And they get replaced. But life is shorter. And we have decreased the peaks. In Colombia, the number of homicides has been reduced. We still have many, but we have been reducing, and whenever there is a peak, the peak doesn't go as high. So we are controlling the problem. We have improved. That's painful in many senses, but we have improved if you take yourself into the Colombian context. Now, how do you get out of this illegal world? Most people get out dead, or you get captured, or some of them surrender, or there is a negotiation, somehow a negotiation that will take some people away. Those are the ways to get out, most of them. Very few will come out of that world outside these categories. And of course, what we have to make sure is whoever comes out doesn't go back. For example, we face a problem in Colombia, which we have had the extradition treaty with the United States. And many of these drug kings came to the United States. And now they are freed here, and they are going to go back to Colombia. And they are not going to be evangelical pastors. In the United States, well, I had them, now you get the guys back. We are in trouble. That's a problem that we have. And we have to make sure that they don't return to this world. They have the right. If you go through prison, you have the right to have a new life. But are we prepared for that new life? Did the United States government and the Colombian government talk about it? Not a single word. So that's a problem. But that's what happens inside that world. Let me take a closer look. I'm going to take a magnifying glass, and I'll take a look at the entrance door. Right here at the entrance. This is outside, but very close to it. This is right there. Many people were born. They are born in this locality, in this community, where there has been plenty of violence for 40 years. And the kid was born there. He was born in the middle of all this situation. And there are some who just came in a little bit to the corner of the neighborhood, the barrio, in the corner, where that's the first step towards moving through the whole neighborhood, then locally and then globally within the path that you have into that world. With those, you have to be here. There are some who get in there and there is no way we're going to change them. They have to go to prison and we have to respect their rights, of course. But around here, we have plenty of opportunities, and we have to work on this. And many of them, what we have to do is pull them back, take them out of that door, make them, take them apart, far away, so that they can see other worlds, the other doors that we want to build or to open. And how do we do that? As I said, within that world inside, you have the police, you have the criminal policy, we have many things. But with this particular group, we have to pull them back, and then we come up with the path that we are opening up to the opportunities, but they have to have opportunities from the very beginning in order to be able to walk that path. And that's some of the things that you have mentioned here. But again, and let me retreat a little bit, you have to think of all the problems simultaneously. If I'm working with this kid here, I'm solving the problem of inequality, violence, and illegality. It's not the problem, take kids, poor kids out of the violent world. That's not the problem. That's part, but you have to understand the whole thing. If you don't understand the whole thing, many good things have been done, many good practices happen, many good people work and help. But if we want to have a strong impact, you have to take into account the whole thing. So how do you do this? I claim that whatever path we build in order to go through a door of opportunities, you have to go through education. That has to be a first stage. Whatever path you take, you have to go. The first stage has to be exactly the same, which is education for everyone. And that's one of the reasons we have that deep inequality in our countries. The inequality associated with education. I come from a privileged family. I have all the possible privileges that we can have in our society. But that works for very few of us. And it has to do with education. And here's the formula that I mentioned to you before. And there are many things that we do simultaneously. The word simultaneously is very crucial, and you have to make that a political purpose. That's why I asked Carlos, who pays you? Because when you are paid by the government, by somehow you won a contract to do something, you represent that government. It's not that you are part of the government. If you take part into the bidding program, then you represent the government. And you have to put all these things, all these variables together, and you have to lead them. Good people we have all over the place. There are very good policemen. There are very good jueces. I forgot the name of judges throughout. Extraordinary people, valuable. But this has to be a project of the state, el Estado. We are the ones who are making the most important decisions. That's what we got into power, to decide, to make decisions. It's difficult, many senses, but this is the Estado, the one who leads. This is not an NGO's problem. They can take part, and they should take part in all these things, but at the end, it's the ones who rule, who make the important decisions that affect people's lives. And we have to be able to work with and understand and learn from different organizations. Many of the ones who work with us at the beginning, they belong to NGOs and said, we are still doing the same thing after all these years. And we got into power with all the costs because it's very difficult. And many things that we have to do. For example, we have a program which is called Prevenir es Mejor. To prevent is better. And to prevent is better, we have the adolescent pregnancy program to avoid. That's one of the causes, for example, that multiplies poverty. We know all over the world about that. We have our programs. We have a particular program of preventing violence against women. It's related to all this violence that we have in here, violence against women. We have the program prevention of drug consumption, and so on. We have a few of those that we have been working on. We know organizations that work with us, that know how to do it, and we put them together, but don't belong to our political program. We have a few programs associated with public health, understanding many of the issues that we live with in this world of violence associated with public health, we have something which is crucial. For example, the integral interventions. That's something that is very easy to say. It's extremely difficult to do. How do you put together different agencies from a government to collaborate and do one thing? Everyone would say, in the intellectual terms, that's what you should do. Do an integral intervention. Do it. That's quite a problem. Very difficult. In traditional political terms, for many cases, the people who belong to the different secretaries, for example, that should get involved with the project, they belong to different factions of political parties, and everyone is behind their own political interest. For example, us, we have a lot of power because we don't have that division. We didn't negotiate with anyone in order to get into power. We appeal to people, and they vote us in. So we don't have to split and divide. And then, in political terms, that's a word that it didn't exist when I was young, which was gobernanza, governability. That's most of the time, I'm going to say an expression that makes sense in English, bullshit. It's a way of dividing power of people who arrange things, but that paja, en colombiano es pura paja, carreta, cuento, rollo, bueno, different Spanish words for that. So it has this incredible new world, very scary gobernanza. Paja. It's a way of dividing things among people, everyone pursuing their own interest, and they will see how to get a share of it. Of course, this is a cartoon that I'm drawing here when I said this, but it has to do it makes a lot of sense. Doing public integral interventions is very difficult. We have done them at the neighborhood level in Medellín, at the municipality level, or at the state level in different regions of Antioquia. And we know how to do them. And they work very well, but it requires the political will, the technical knowledge, because the technical knowledge is very important for doing things, but under a political construction. Then when we put that together, working with the community in the terms that I mentioned to you, it's wonderful. And many extraordinary things happen. When you put all the development tools within a place and people can see, understand, feel, they believe, that's when people change. And that's very powerful. And that makes a lot of sense. And that's the building of hope. You don't have to have the problem solved. Most people, I strongly believe this as a human being, when they see that there is a path that they can follow, they are recognized in their dignity. We respect. They are recognized on their capabilities. They react and they go through that path. Most people will do it. I think all over the place, all over the world. And all what I can say is in Medellín and Antioquia, they do. But because we have seen it, we had built it. That's what's marvelous. And that's what takes the effort of being a former professor of math, and now in this condition, and I don't know what I'm going to be in my life, but all these efforts make sense. And it all has to do with education, understood in a very broad sense. How am I doing with time? Alberto, you are the one who, because...
The keynotes can go, but...
How much time do I have left?
15
15?
minutes.
Okay. Okay. One thing, for example, participative budget. This comes from Brazil, from Porto Alegre, right? That's a tool that is very powerful within this context. I'm talking about the context where we live in Medellín. It's very powerful. The community takes part. The participative budget, we did it in Medellín, and gives an opportunity to a community that has been oppressed, fragmented, scared, fearful, because in those neighborhoods, there is one who decides what's going to happen to everyone. That's the state. That's what they do. The participative budget is an extraordinary tool. Very simple things. Very simple, but very powerful to people when they start taking back into their hands their decisions. It can be destroyed in a day. Most of the things that I'm saying here can be destroyed. For example, you asked a question previously saying, how do you make sure that this is done by the next government? Nobody can assure that. We are in a democracy. We have to do it very well. The community has to feel empowered. They have to like it. And the elections will decide. If the Republicans win the elections here next time, they immediately are going to stop what Obama has been trying to do with the health program. Immediately. And what we do here, everything can be destroyed. Another one can come into the power and decide that they don't like this and they will do something. And you can take the participant budget and make it a tool of traditional politics. These leaders are going to decide, you will get this, you will get this, and you have a theater act in front of everyone saying that you are making decisions. Everything can be done. When they want to do it, they will do it. The only way to preserve these things is you go to vote, and then it's an election, the community would have a say, and we have to work by democracy. Fortunately, even though many times we wish we could do things for a longer time and all these things, but fortunately we live in a democracy, as painful as it may be sometimes. But that's, so, 13 minutes, okay? With Q&A. Okay, well, I was going to tell you about education. This is what we are doing in Antioquia right now. I just quickly go through it to explain something that also has to do with experts. In the United States, for example, you have, as a society, a permanent discussion about the quality of the education in the United States. You want all your kids to be good in sciences, in math, reasoning, to be able to read. The same thing in Mexico, in Colombia, in Bolivia. It's exactly the same thing. But the problem that we are solving is not the quality of math in Colombia, even though I am a mathematician, and in Antioquia we are working in the mathematical network, and we are doing a lot of work with our teachers. But that's not the problem that we are solving. We are solving another problem, inequality, violence, and cultural illegality. And education has to do with it. But what we have done is a way of mobilizing the whole society. The quality of education, and I have many friends who are technical experts, and they have university positions talking about education. Quality of education is an abstract concept for most people. For most people, they have no idea what is the meaning of quality of education, let's say in Colombia. Has nothing to do with their lives. They don't know. You go out in the street and say, this guy is good in math. For most people, what they are trying to do is to get their kid into school. And that's it. For example, I'll give you another example that I have used in some discussions. Some people said, we have to be competitive. Businessmen can understand competitiveness. Clusters, which I understand and I think is important. But that's not our project. Our project is human development. And we have to be competitive in Colombia. We have to have good highways, roads, and so on. But that's not the problem. That's not the reason we got into power. We got into power to transform the society and to talk about human development. So all these things, many times, it's a mode. People talking about the quality of education. We do very bad in the PISA competition worldwide. And so they say, well, you have to, all the teachers are very bad. That's what they say here in the United States all the time. Their teachers are very bad. We have to get very good teachers into teaching, like in Finland. So, we have in Antioquia, outside Medellín, in Antioquia we have around 50,000 teachers. And I claim, in Antioquia, all teachers are good. All can improve, but all of them are good. There is not a single teacher in Antioquia who is bad. And we start working. If I attend to what the experts say, they will send me 50,000 from Harvard or from Stanford, say, there you have these geniuses teaching. That's false. That's not the problem that we are solving. So how we work, we have to get the whole society involved with education. And when we say Antioquia the most educated, Antioquia is not the most educated. That's our challenge, and people start talking about education. And how, we were talking about this during lunch, how we get every single human being in Antioquia, that's where I am, interested in education. So we have to explain to people. But it's not that they have to be good in math, which I hope they are, but that's another problem. What education means associated with dignity. You are capable. You can transform yourself. The education gives you the opportunities. And we start moving the whole society around education. And people, you go to Antioquia, and they look at me and say, Antioquia, the most educated. And say, they are on my channel already. They are talking about education. And people start thinking about that. And we have to move the whole society. So we have the premium, the prize for the education, Antioquia la más educada. All these things, we have been doing it from Medellín, from the year 2004. And, well, we do many things in all aspects. This I just wanted to point out to my beautiful wife and very smart one. Here it says digital women. I'll explain to you later what it means. But we had an argument last night saying that they didn't appear here, and I said, you are there in a program that she has, and here it is. But anyway, so we move the whole society, and everyone knows about education, and we move in different sectors. For example, you take the mayor of a town which is 10,000 people. I'm going to show it to you. Why in the hell the mayor is going to be worried about the state exams about mathematics? Not a single mayor knows what happened to the schools in the state exam about mathematics. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to do with their lives. But we created what we call the Knowledge Olympics in Antioquia. And we take the exam in mathematics and language and civic capabilities. And everyone in Antioquia is going to take it, and all the kids are proud to take it, and all the mayors want their kids to get involved. All the teachers want to take part in it, and we are moving the whole Antioquia, and they are going to take the same exam, and they are going to tell us, and we are going to find out if they have problems at infractions, reasoning, and so on. But we take things to people, and we put them in a context where it has to do with their lives. So we don't spend our time arguing that the union is going to refuse the whole thing. That's not the problem. We have to get every single school in Antioquia seeing how they are going to improve, and they are working, and the mayor is proud if the schools do better for the first time. And the rector of the school, the master of the school, I don't know how the principal, it's involved, and it's a challenge, and we have been moving the whole thing throughout the place, and people want to improve. But that's not only to improve in math and language or civic capabilities, but the whole society changes the spirit. Said, my kid can learn. And my daughter can have a fellowship at this particular place. And people start believing. It will take us some time to improve in the test. But we move the whole society around education. So they know where they start seeing science and technology in different places. Then we have entrepreneurship, and we have in high school, the last 2 years of school, how they become entrepreneurs. They start looking around their pieces of land where they live with different views. They have a life project and so on. And that's how you change society. We still have a long way to go in math. But we are moving the whole society around this. We are pulling them back. We have to work with the police, with all the forces that we may have within that world, but we have to pull people back, and we are making that door, the entrance doors narrower. That you can bet. It's a challenge. It's a political challenge. It's not a technical problem. It's a political problem that we are solving. I'm going to show you, because all these things, and that's our power, when you put all these things together, then you start seeing some beautiful buildings in Medellín, but now you know where the buildings come from. It wasn't. In all the planet, we need schools. In the whole planet, even here, you need libraries. You need computers. You need all these things. And I hope they are all beautiful all over the place. But when all those symbols, physical symbols, are related to what we mean politically and what we do politically and we represent politically, that's what the power is. It's not a problem of having a very good architect to design a beautiful building in a poor neighborhood. It's a problem of having this way of understanding the world to have the transition. And that's the key. I'm going to show you then what we did in Medellín, and that's pictures only, but with a few words. I'll show you some pictures. For example, this was Medellín, la más educada. Once we got into power, we were very proud, and we are still very proud of what we do. En Medellín, la más educada. That's a picture of Medellín. We went through all these mountains. It's a huge city. It's the most beautiful city in the world. And there it is. And we walk it through all places. So, for example, at the top of a mountain, you see where we began. We have to buy the houses. We tore them down. We were building, and there it was. At a poor neighborhood where nobody would dare to go. Today, people go to Medellín, and they will never go to the rich sector of the city to see a building. They go to all these places, but that building that has won many prizes makes sense not as a building, but as a social project that we had done in there. I'll show you some pictures. For example, at this corner, we built what we call an entrepreneurship center for a poor neighborhood. Entrepreneurship. We had the Banco of Opportunities that goes with them. Everything has an educational process around it. So it looks like that now. This was a school. It is like that. This was a school. It is like that. What's the message? That my father is an architect, my father was an architect? No, the message is dignity, beauty. And what is the place that we are changing? The school. And that means the most beautiful place in the whole world has to be all the schools that we have. And that's powerful, because the mother wants to take their kids to that place. And she can look through the window here and see where the kid went. Another part of Medellín, this is a science and technology park. We connect the city. We had all these urban interventions through the streets, putting together the pieces so that you can walk through one place to another. But this is the science and technology park. Beautiful. And why is it in there? Because we got into power. Because we said we are going to have a science and technology so that everyone can go to in Medellín. Anyone who comes to Medellín goes there. It's a touristic attraction. All these things are touristic attractions now. This is the botanical garden. It was completely torn down. Now it is like that. That was a street. It is like this. The cultural center in Moravia, wonderful place. It was like that. It's like this. This is a place that I like very much. This is a very poor neighborhood in Medellín. One barrio here, another barrio here. I don't know how many people were killed in confrontation between kids from here and kids from here, all the same. And we built this bridge. We put them together. Nothing has happened there. I'm sure there has been violence. In all these places that I have shown you, there hasn't been a single killing. We have many of killings, homicides in Medellín yet, but in those places where we build with those conditions, they will never dare to have somebody killed in the library up in the mountain. Not a single one. And the first day that there is one, it will appear all over the world, but not a single one, because the community knows what it means, because they took part in the construction. That's part of their dreams. It wasn't something that, as a mayor, I got there and we did it, and they said, look at the present that I'm giving you. That's what we built. The means justified the end. How we walk, how we got in there. For example, it was like that. Now it is like this. And now we go to Antioquia. Now I have to talk about what I'm doing formally. Now, Medellín has 2.5 million people. And we go to a town who has 10,000 people, and it's up in the mountains, very difficult to get in there. How we do it? As we said, all these things we have translated into the whole region. As you move away from Medellín, the conditions deteriorate. The social condition, the basic needs deteriorate. So we have to get into all these places and build hope. So instead of having a place for entrepreneurship, a school, a park library, as I show you, all these things, the cultural center, the science and technology, we have a place, which is called the Parque Educativo. It's one place. And that's the place that is going to be the symbol of the transformation of the town. So we put all those things together in a single place. But they have to compete for the places. I'm not giving places away saying, you are my friend, there you have a Parque Educativo, and so on. There is a competition. And they have to give, in order to win in the competition, the first thing that they have to do is give the, ¿cómo se dice? El lote. The plot. There is plenty of land around, but you have to present the best plot that you have in your town. It's going to be the most important place. Then you have to present your proposal, your project, educational project. Are you talking about education? Are you interested? How you are working on it? And then you have to present how people participate. So it's the mayor on behalf of the whole community with a plot and a proposal to make education the key of the transformation of the town. If they win a Parque Educativo. And what is going to happen in the Parque Educativo is going to have a design that is unique by an architect. It's not repeatable any place in the world. And in there you are going to have teachers, maestras and maestros. Because teachers, in Spanish we talk about el maestro, but 70%, 80% are women, and we talk about el maestro. And then in that place, the first place that you will find is the place for maestras and maestros. So they are going to be the most important people in town. So they have a special place in the new place in town. I'll go to show you some. And then everything is going to be digital. The program that my wife is leading is called Digital Women, and in particular works with teachers, women teachers, mujeres digitales, which has to do with how you can empower women, in particular teachers, through BL digital means, but that's a place. Everything will be digital. We may have a hard time to get into those places by road, but digitally we can get in there. There is a place for entrepreneurship. There is a place for culture. There is a place for high school. And you put all those things together in this new place. It's going to be the symbol of hope. All what we mean, all what we say, all the programs that we have can take part in that place. We are going to build 80. We are building 80. That's quite a challenge to build 80. I'll show you some and I finish. Planes municipales integrales, intermunicipal plans. You have to look at the whole municipality, but these are small ones, and you design them. They have never been designed, very few. So you have to think, what are the places, where is the school, what can we do? And we are just organizing, but that gives an identity to the town. It's really wonderful. For example, this is Vigía del Fuerte. It's by the Atrato River, near to Chocó, the Pacific coast of Colombia. It's a jungle. Very poor, the poorest town in Antioquia, 4,000 people. The only way to get there is by an airplane, a very small airplane, avioneta, once or twice a week, or you take the river and it takes I don't know how many hours in order to get to the ocean. Very poor people. So that's where we are going to go. Black people, most 95%, indígenas, the other 5%, and mestizos like me. And that's the community. All these kids, we mobilize the whole community. Everyone now there knows that we are going to have a Parque Educativo. We are going to be a school for the Indians. We are building a sports complex in this very tiny town that captures the physical abilities that most kids have in that town. And we are putting together those simultaneously in something that they never dreamed that it would happen. And I could, if I were thinking in political terms, I could forget about them. 4,000, 5,000 people is irrelevant in the political sense, if you count. Well, there they are. Here's the place where you are. This is the way it used to be. This is the design of the Parque Educativo. And this is the Parque Educativo that we are going to inaugurate next week. And this is something that they never dreamed that it could happen to them. And here's the sport complex there. And here's the place, this is the school for the indígenas, en Veraj. That's the school that they had. This was the design, and this is the one that we are going to inaugurate next week. So we are putting in that place, a remote place, we are putting this Parque Educativo, the sports complex, in the school. And that's the point of the whole thing, is how we transform that community. They never thought this could happen. So we have to move the community so that they are empowered, and these are the places that symbolize that they can be transformed. In Apartado, we are building this. I didn't bring the process of construction, the university campus there. Here are some of our mountains. This is a town in the middle of those mountains, Peque. That's the cabecera municipal. There, these are some of the roads. This is the people, the mobilization, people moving around because they want to be part of the parque. You see peasants in the sense. This guy here he calls himself el arriero del siglo XXI, 21st century peasant. He has computers all over the place, but he said, we are peasant, but we belong to the 21st century. And this is the place that we are going to rebuild, and this is how it's going to be their Parque Educativo. Just one more, another place, mobilization. All the kids in all these towns know what a Parque Educativo is. They have been drawing the Parque Educativo. They have a contest for the name of the Parque Educativo. They are dreaming. Something that they take away. Violence and corruption take away the ability to dream. And there is how it's going to be. It's going built. It's being built. Cáceres, another town by the river, very poor. You can see our people, our colors. This used to be a prison in the town, and this is how it's going to be. Anori, it has been attacked by the guerrilla 1,000 times. This is the mobilization. This is where it is going to be. Yondó, over the Magdalena River. Again, all people, all our communities, we recognize our different origins, the emotion, the dreams of the people, and this is how it is going to be. Guatapé. Titiribí in the mountains. It's a coffee town. This is the whole community moving around the Parque Educativo. It's a fiesta. This is how it is going to be, and it's going to be finished in a couple of months. Tames is another one in the mountains. This is the place, this is the plot. This is how it is going to be, and this is how it was 2 months ago. So all these things, what I have told you here is how 14 years and a half ago, a group of people decided that we were going to be part of this society, that we were going to transform this society, that we didn't want, we were indignados, to put it in more modern terms. But we were indignados that said, well, we are going to get into power. And we got. And this is the path that we have been following through all these years. I talk about principles, I talk about problems, I talk about solutions, coherence, consistency, trust, all these walls, all these things. And at the end, this is all what we have been doing, and that's the reason why I'm here. I represent a group of people that gave ourselves, we gave ourselves the opportunity to dream, to come into action. We change our life in many senses, and things can be done. Problems, plenty. Obstacles every single day. But we strongly believe that we can build hope. And what we have been doing is building hope. And this is our recipe. This is our story. There are many different stories, and most of them are very valuable, but this is ours. And thank you for inviting me here.